Hi, everyone.
Hello.
Thank you so much for coming out and being part of this session today. My name is Chris Edwards, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of a company called The Third Floor, which you're going to learn a lot more than you ever wanted to know about today. And my trusty co-pilot, the lead virtual production developer, the amazing Johnson Thomason. And if you guys are jonesing for some more technical information about what I'm about to present, definitely stay for the end because that's what Johnson's going to get into. So I'm dressed in my fancy sport coat today because we actually have a really big anniversary coming up 12 days from now. It's really hard for me to believe that it's actually been 20 years and since the grassroots origin story of our company and our founding. So to kick it off, I'd like to show you this little mini documentary we put together of our history.
Chris Edwards was born in 1974 in Maryland. The son of a costume designer and a rocket scientist, he was influenced as much by construction sets and early computer graphics as he was by art, animation, and classic cinema. One day, Chris's mom brought home a mysterious book from the local library. Industrial Light and Magic, The Art of Special Effects, showed Chris how pioneers like John Dykstra, Phil Tippett, and Dennis Muren had combined technology and art to make incredible visuals come to life. From then on, Chris's mission in life was clear. 1. Go to film school. 2. Work really hard. 3. Join George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, and other ambitious filmmakers in their pursuit of innovative visual storytelling. After graduating in 1997, Chris was hired as one of 6 3D workbook artists at Walt Disney Feature Animation, responsible for pre-planning every shot in Disney's Dinosaur. Chris's broad range of skills served him well when he was invited up to Skywalker Ranch to help enhance THX 1138, the George Lucas director's cut, on the 3rd floor of Lucas's Victorian mansion. Renovating THX to George Lucas's satisfaction was their trial by fire, and the reward for planning, acting in, and delivering more than half of the final visual effects for THX 1138 was the opportunity to help Lucas design thousands more shots for Star Wars Episode III. Revenge of the Sith. Later, Steven Spielberg joined the fray to guest direct several key Episode III action sequences via the team's unique 3D animatics process. After 2 years at the ranch, Chris inspired the majority of the Third Floor artists to join forces as equal partners. And in October 2007, the Third Floor Inc. was established as an artist-driven studio in Los Angeles, California. And studio by studio, film by film, the Third Floor's workforce and reputation grew. From Valkyrie to the Narnia series to winning the opportunity to visualize practically every Marvel film since the original Iron Man. And yes, to return to support Lucasfilm on their recent Star Wars films and streaming series. These days, the Third Floor has talented teams all around the world, working on award-winning episodics such as Game of Thrones, and more than 75% of Hollywood's blockbusters each year, including groundbreaking virtual productions such as Avatar, Gravity, and Avengers Endgame. For over 15 years, Chris has promoted real-time visualization as a universal art form that can be used to efficiently design architecture, commercials, video games, theme parks, and other forms of immersive entertainment, such as virtual reality and artificial reality. Chris is perpetually passionate about the Third Floor serving as a catalyst for creative collaboration. And even though he is the undisputed champion of professional visualization, he's primarily focused on making the visualization process more intuitive and accessible to students and the next generation of inspired creators.
So I have to explain how trippy this was. We were invited up by Dan Gregoire, the founder of Halon Entertainment, to be a part of this special team working on a film that I was inspired by in film school. And not only did we get to renovate this film using some post-viz and some planning to create additional shots for the film, we actually got to act in the film. So this is actually me dressed up in the robot cop outfits, doing some extra scenes. And I got to be directed by George Lucas, even though he didn't actually know it was me because I was wearing like a green ski mask the whole time. So that's how the whole experience began. And it's just gotten crazier and crazier ever since. So what I admired from film school and have increasingly understood throughout my career is that filmmakers are always looking for new and innovative ways to harness technologies and use them perhaps for the first time in a novel way to propel their storytelling and to define their art. Here with Orson Welles and his cinematographer Greg Toland, they were using new camera systems and new approaches to do a deep focus technique in Citizen Kane. George Lucas, of course, was one of the first to take the modern technologies and apply them in a way to help out pre-production. So when we formed the Previsualization Society, we found all of these clips, and together with the other Previs company heads, we put on these showcases where we would explain the humble origins of Previs, which included actually no computer graphics at all. This little lipstick camera was used to just go through a diorama of a mock-up of Endor so they could plan the speeder bike chase. I actually prefer this cut over what's in the actual movie. Check out the ending. And then years later, George on episode 1, under the direction of David Dozoritz, worked on what I call a multimedia depiction of the speeder bike chase, of the pod racers, I should say, the other speeder bikes. And this was everything from storyboards to little actors, some puppets even, just whatever media they could use to depict what was going to be in the scene. And of course, so when I had my chance to get to the ranch, the gauntlet had already been thrown. And so we really had to bring it, right? So we got together, we took all the reference from the art department, these little doodles from Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, drawing them overnight, faxing them to us, or doodling it on a napkin over lunch. All of this was homogenized into the previs scenes that were an option for editorial. And together with the whole team, we did over 7,000 iterations of these shots. It was a pretty big feat for the time, but now that's pretty normal for what we do in a major motion picture. So we were there trying to keep our sanity and our morale up by making little silly newsletters for our monthly activities. And because of that camaraderie we had, we stuck together as a band of brothers. Sorry, there was no sisters there, but I wish there was. That's why when we created the third floor, we made it a lot more inclusive. So we made ourselves feel better by creating a logo and our aspiration for being our own company. We went from San Francisco down to Los Angeles, rented an office that could have all 6 of us, plus maybe 1 or 2 new hires if we were lucky. Of course, no one believed us that we had worked on Star Wars, and we couldn't show that footage until the movie was released. So there was a lag of a year or so where we were working on other types of projects. So including this Hong Kong theme park renovation called Ocean Park, and the very first cinematic created by the creator of Final Fantasy under Microsoft's and his Mistwalker Studios. This is called Lost Odyssey. So it's really incredible to me when I look back at all of these examples of how far we've come. Actually, these days, we've tallied that we've actually influenced over 4,000 projects across a really wide variety of media, including in games, VR, and theme park attractions. And I'm proud to say that now almost all of our content is created through the Unreal Engine. That's been our big revolution. And so here's some of that content from recent work. been a little busy. Thank you. Well, it's not me, it's our whole crew. It's all the artists and technicians that have put their effort into this, and to our clients who've given us these extraordinary experiences. So if you'll indulge me, I'd like to quickly walk through some of memory lane of things that maybe some of you haven't seen before, that are, in my mind, the pivotal moments, some of the pivotal moments that really help drive the adoption of real-time technologies. And so for us, our big break after doing all those other types of projects was, again, David Dezoritz, who is the first manager at the Skywalker Ranch art department / Previs team. He had a small company called POV Digital Entertainment. Was one of the pioneering Previs companies. He hired us onto his team, and we had the pleasure of working together to do really epic scenes like this. Now, our computers were mere mortal machines, and unfortunately, we didn't have Nanite and Lumen at the time. So we really had to embrace the limitations of the hardware and the software at the time, because we didn't want to have to render anything. We wanted to keep it all real time. So we created proxy characters that would allow us to do large-scale battles and still be able to scrub inside our scene, in this case in Maya. So that actually influenced the way we now continue to stage scenes. We don't just go to try to win an Academy Award for animation. You know, we're trying to stage the scene as quickly as possible so that we can make iterations happen very quickly. And to do that, we use this process.
Taking its name from characters that were so lightweight and low-res, they resembled origami. GamiViz, as in origami viz, starts with basic textured characters, an unlit environment, and representational shapes for props and VFX, capturing the action in stills and keyframe poses. There are a variety of techniques we can implement with this approach. For example, lighting the scene, adding textures to the character, and fully animating the cameras. Depending on preference, we can build in shading and lighting, add crowds, or forego those efforts for speed and turnover. We can also color code sections of the environment and characters, or imitate the on-set look more closely. GamiViz also allows for a built-in TechViz component, delineating measurements within the environment to help stunts and other departments quickly see scale and distances needed for the shoot. The basis for our GamiViz approach is that through scale, color coding, and minimal shape details, we can quickly define your shots, resulting in speedy and efficient sequence turnarounds. This can then evolve and build out relevant details and polish for further clarity across the production team.
So then, almost in parallel, we were also blessed to work on Beowulf with the amazing Robert Zemeckis, who taught us a lot about his approach to virtual cinematography. Now, he had pre-recorded all the actors on a mocap stage via Sony ImageWorks' team, and had all these great performances that he depicted in low resolution using Motion Builder, which some of you may remember. It's still around. It is a hybrid between a DCC and, of course, a game engine, somewhere in the Netherlands in between. We really had to hack it to make this work, but we got it to work with this thing called the InterSense, which is a bizarre device used mostly for the military and for CAD CAM. This was an ultrasonic system that allowed us to track the camera. Bob was okay with those limitations. He had a tethered umbilical to a VHS camera body that had no actual display in it. And he just used it for the weight of it, so he could move around and actually would actually play through the shots and find those magical moments and those happy accidents just by looking at the monitors that were placed strategically around the room. This is a process that he calls director's layout, or DLO, which is never really caught on, but we still call it that. So a couple years later, this big giant juggernaut started to happen. It was the Secret Dark Ops project that all the cool kids and a lot of young students were invited into. It was amazing, this talented crew of so many artisans from different walks of life coming to rally around Cameron's vision. We were blessed to start as part of the bolstering of the 3D art department to build out the very first versions of what these home tree, all of these different locations would look like, and then later adapted by other teams, and of course Weta to make the on-set experience possible, which featured this work on a simulcam. This is, I think, one of the first times that we even knew about this term. This, in fact, is the first shot, so I'm told, that Cameron did actually operate himself using a simulcam approach. So this was live motion capture actors off stage being superimposed, like augmented reality, through his viewfinder into the actual set that they were filming. That's what simulcam is. And then a couple of years later, we had our big break as a studio. This was a single evening that changed our trajectory forever. Basically, I had found out a little too late that Iron Man 1 was finished and Iron Man 2 was being crewed up for. They literally said, we're making our decision tomorrow, but if you'd like to throw your name in the hat, you can do a test for us, but we have no assets, and good luck. So we went back, we cobbled together the boys, and we made our little test that included some work that we had already pioneered for StarCraft 2, believe it or not, with Blizzard, and some cinematics that we were creating for Command & Conquer Red Alert 3 for all those fans out there. Also, I, as a fanboy at SIGGRAPH, went to this little booth and was the first one among their first customers to get these little, inertial motion capture suits called the Accent Movin or MVN suits. We put all that together. Thank God that was available, because we kit bashed it and we made something that looked similar to this. And that won us the gig to work on Iron Man 2 and pretty much every Marvel movie since then. So back in those days, it was like everything was like a MacGyver setup. You didn't have enough time to set anything up. It wasn't very professional, but it worked in the end. When we put the flux capacitor together and got up to escape velocity, we would make something that looked like this. But years later, we made it a little more professional, and we started calling it VRP. This was called Virtual Rapid Prototyping, or what is now known as pre-cap, or pre-capture with the mocap, including a live virtual camera. So here's a little bit more on that.
Capture stage, and we're getting real actors in motion capture suits. We're getting the director to come out and direct them, and they're actually going through the scenes and speaking the dialogue for the scenes, and then we're capturing all their motion into the computer and using that to create our previs scene.
Just like in live action, we do a number of takes, and he says, that's the best one. You know, Patrick will say, that's the circle take.
Good, let's do it.
Awesome.
Okay. Yeah, moving on.
So we had apple boxes and gaff tape and simple marks so that they knew that that was a wall. You know, the best that we could do to sort of recreate that experience, the better.
The director is working very closely with the scene operator to change and manipulate the scene as they see fit to work for their story. So if they want a wall moved this way or that way, or they want a single door turned into double doors, they need to move somebody slightly to the left or slightly to the right, the scene operator can do that right there on the fly. And then we come to one of our offices where we have our own virtual camera set up, and then you can shoot as much camera as you like.
Action!
When you're recording the takes and the editor is recording these streams into the Avid or Final Cut and editing as we're doing camera.
And cut!
This is both things shaking hands, the traditional principles of live action filmmaking with all the fun modern computer graphics stuff. Like those two worlds shaking hands is the coolest thing ever.
All right, that's a wrap, guys.
Hey, we did this time.
Well done.
So the next thing that we realized was that there were only a few good examples of successful hybrid, super ambitious virtual productions. And the problem was Not that there wasn't enough ideas out there to do those productions. There was a lot of directors that really wanted to do this, but they didn't really have a medium by which to pitch this highfalutin idea so that everyone, all the stakeholders, the distributors and the financiers could really see the vision come together. So we created what we called Pitch Viz, I think, around the same time, or maybe other people came up with the same idea, but just the idea of creating a teaser trailer of the film so you can get financing and support. One of the ones that comes to mind is this work that we did for director Len Wiseman on the sequel to Total Recall. And so it was really fun. We got to go and brainstorm with just sitting down with Len and creating this topsy-turvy city, and wouldn't it be great if we had this hover car and it could kind of get dislodged after an action moment and then be saved in the end. Just like an idea overnight that one of our guys came up with, and someone liked it because it greenlit the movie, and this was the teaser trailer for the movie. So this is when we started to realize the true power of visualization being a catalyst for people to really believe in the vision, even at this early stage. So it's simple formula. You just insert the script into the Previs machine, create a pitch viz very easily, and you get all the funding and support you ever need. And we did this across now hundreds of films and projects, and we think it's a good idea, usually. Even for seminal filmmakers like the legendary Steven Spielberg, on big, ambitious projects, which are really hard for many people to visualize, even if reading the book on Ready Player One, they need to show something visual in order to get all the stakeholders. So we were blessed to be able to work with him very early on Ready Player One. Okay, so at this point in our careers, we kind of looked out at the horizon and started to see that the value of Previs is not just about pre-production, right? It's before pre-production and development. It's also to help get the filmmakers ready for the shoot and to save some money when they're doing all that hard work on set, mostly to save time. And of course, into what we call post-viz, which is the application of Previs in post to help assist the decision-making process in visual effects. And the area that we felt was the most underserved to help channel this and protect the continuity of the director's vision from start to finish was the tech viz and the virtual production component. So one of the first examples where we really did a tech viz heavy analysis of a scene or a tech viz forward project was with Bryan Singer on X-Men Days of Future Past. And this is one where we actually won a VS award, the first one for the outstanding virtual cinematography, and on this scene.
Cinematography for the kitchen scene was built from Previs, which established all of Quicksilver's gags and set up the look and physics of what it was like to be in Quicksilver time. We mapped out an approach to production using a round room, high-speed shooting elements, and digital effects, setting character, camera, and prop positions. Moves and rigs from Previs were replicated by the shooting unit, sometimes at 250 frames per second on green screen, and sometimes at 3200 frames per second using the Phantom camera. We also put marks on C-stands at the correct distances, and had a click track where we cued the actor to touch certain objects so that, when comped, it looked like he really interacted with the officers. A technodolly move developed in Previs was used to roll the motion control camera 90 degrees to fake his transition from the wall to the ground. This foreground pass and the corresponding background pass were exported from Maya to the technodolly.
So you guys get the idea of just how complicated even a single shot can be. I want to do a huge shout out and a debt of gratitude to the great and powerful Casey Schatz, who's been the unsung hero of virtual production and motion control for more years than I can remember. He is currently James Cameron's favorite on-set virtual person, and will probably never leave. So I'll have to go to New Zealand to see my old buddy Casey. But thank you for all of the work that he put into our company's growth in virtual production over the years. A couple years later, we turned up all the dials on the production of Beauty and the Beast. And so here's a little clip of how we orchestrated that.
Heavily tech-viz as proof of concept to ensure that the shots designed in Previs were achievable on the day. Once on set, every department synced to the musical track using Pro Tools timecode. Even the practical trolleys were planned and then operated using timecode triggers. We used the virtual workflow to group the shots for maximum efficiency based on the technodolly's position in the room. Over 80 unique setups were shot over 6 shooting days by sending Maya camera curves to the technodolly.
So a lot of people at this point were really curious, what is this virtual production thing? How does that even work? Can I apply that to a mere mortal budget? Is it just for the expensive elite productions? And the answer is no, but you still need to understand how it works. So we put on a bunch of lectures and even spoke to the Directors Guild of America, where we were able to remind everyone that this virtual production thing isn't really new. It's just that all the other examples were so custom that it was really hard to explain. And now that we're actually homogenizing it down into standard workflows. So one of the examples I used for creating a standard workflow is the 8-year tour of duty we did on Game of Thrones. Again, very blessed to be there with a very talented small team, embedded in the production, totally trusted to not only lay out the shots, but to create these diagrams and a lot of the metadata that I think resulted in sort of feature film quality in many of the sequences, even though it was a television time frame and budget. And I think that was greatly aided by the power of the Previs process, including in this shot or sequence. You guys remember the Battle of the Bastards?
Our previous team visualized the entire scene, working with the director to develop a cinematic look and build up that gradually transformed from the epic grandeur of a Kurosawa film into a more chaotic, truly horrific personal experience akin to Saving Private Ryan. With a very constricted time frame and almost no storyboards, we essentially created digital dailies for the larger action beats. After a blocking pass, we fine-tuned camera angles and paths of action to help tell Jon Snow's story and mapped out a complex puzzle of real and CG elements to depict fighting in front of the lens and beyond.
I wish I had more time. So all of this was against the backdrop of us also working furiously to create AAA game cinematics and to plan out some really awesome sequences in these various games. So we were already becoming familiar with how it is to work with a game studio, to work with a game engine. And so when the VR revolution came upon us, we jumped right into that and helped Hollywood create some of the most ambitious VR projects as an experiment for taking movies like this and making an interactive, immersive experience. That was all the prelude to us feeling prepared enough to create tools that we could then give to production designers and directors directly to be able to explore the scene themselves instead of having to pilot us over our shoulders in the traditional VFX way. So we built this tool called Pathfinder, where you can go in and do all your annotation, and there's Johnson rocking it. So it was so awesome because all the directors that came in to kind of get their orientation and to sort of gear up their vision for the next series of episodes was one of the stops on their tour was the Previs department, where we got to show them how what they had at their disposal. Here's the sets that they had, both live action replicas and virtual sets, and they could jump around inside that and get a really good orientation and also understand just exactly how big those dragons really were. So when it works great, Previs becomes a center hub of collaboration, really aiding communication between all of the other artisans and the director and producers. So this is where the rubber started hitting the road, not only because the pandemic was upon us and there was no real way to travel to alien planets, but the safest way was to go and build out the volume that you've heard so much about in Mandalorian. So we feel also very fortunate to be invited into the inner circle of Jon Favreau's amazing creation and the guys at Lucasfilm/ILM, our old buddies, trusting us to do a very rapid prototyping process where we're working very efficiently just ahead of the next couple of episodes, designing all of these sequences in close collaboration with the film crew and the directors. at a fidelity that is more than what we've ever been able to do because we're using Unreal as the core solution. And in fact, that helps inform every day's setup, including where to put all the live action stuff, how to stage the actors, and how to get the most out of the in-camera visual effects LED volume screen. So that work has continued from the original Mandalorian all the way through the latest series. So thank you, Lucasfilm. And all the while, we're always trying to innovate and not rest on our laurels, creating new systems that will help empower the clients and get the power in their hands. So as you can see here. Now I'm going to hand it over to the amazing Johnson, who will expand on how we even do this and some of the challenges we've tackled in the pipeline. Cheers.
Thanks, Chris. I can't keep up with Chris's jacket style or his presentation making ability. I'm going to kind of slow this down and get into the weeds a little bit. I still can't go too deep because of the time we have left, but if you are interested in talking in more detail about Unreal Pipeline for visualization, we'll try to leave some time for that in the Q&A. The 20-year legacy of TTF is really amazing. I've been here 8 years, and I've got to say I really admire what you and the other 5 gentlemen were able to do. Not only have you had business success, but you've been able to maintain this warm family atmosphere that I've really appreciated during my time at the company. So thank you.
Welcome.
My background was making films as a teenager. I'm sort of the next generation, so I was coming up watching the Star Wars prequels, being inspired by those and The Matrix and Lord of the Rings and the 10 hours of behind the scenes on those films. And had access to digital filmmaking tools kind of for the first time at a consumer level. And so exploring through After Effects and what I could do there. Eventually I got a CS degree. Honestly, I kind of muscled my way through that degree. I didn't understand at the time what code and film had to do with each other. More on that later. After that, I continued to make films, and I was able to get into USC's film program where I met Mike Fink, the chair of the film school, as a career visual effects supervisor, and he encouraged me to pursue visual effects, but also previs. And at the time, several of my professors were working on Jungle Book, Jon Favreau's film, which used game engine tech and VR to facilitate their filmmaking process. So it was at that point that I got into Unreal, and then I joined the Third Floor shortly after leaving grad school, and it was good timing. So an aside, Francis Ford Coppola is credited by some with coining the term pre-visualization. In the 80s, his film One from the Heart, he had a process of visualizing the film, and in a full circle moment, we were asked to do previs on his latest Megalopolis, which is out this weekend. I worked with that team in previs, and the movie's quite a wild ride. It's one you kind of have to see to believe. I definitely encourage you to go see it while it's in theaters. So one of the themes that Chris alluded to is of creative pioneers in the director's seat, driving innovation. Coppola, as I mentioned, if you know your Hollywood history, you know without Coppola there's probably no George Lucas, because he was a champion of his in the early days. George obviously pushing the bounds of what can be done in filmmaking and digital technology. James Cameron, obviously with Avatar, motion capture, virtual camera. And latest in this lineage, I think, is Jon Favreau, who deserves a ton of credit for the merging of game engine and film work. And we've had the pleasure of working with all of these gentlemen and trying to facilitate their aims. And these are just a sampling. Alfonso Cuarón in Gravity, Robert Zemeckis, the great example. So it's the desire to improve the way of working and communicating for this collaborative art form that drives technological progress, and we're excited to be a part of that. So Chris showed a scene from season 1 of Mandalorian. I was a part of that mocap team and the motion-based blurg stuff that you saw there on the volume. We were still working in Maya at that time, and between season 1 and season 2, the production at Lucasfilm came to us and said, we would really like you to work in Unreal for season 2 because the virtual art department is in Unreal, the LED volume is in Unreal. We would like you to be a part of that ecosystem so there's not this sort of visual difference between previs and assets are more easily shared. Can you do it? And so between the seasons, we had about 3 months, and we formed a sort of crack team of developers. And I was in the right place at the right time, having known Unreal for several years, and also having done a good bit of development at the third floor. I know Chuy Munoz is out there somewhere. He was on that team, so thank you, Chuy, for your work. We were able to get that first generation Unreal pipeline up and running for season 2. We called it Mercury, and our team works in master scenes on that show. Jon Favreau likes to previs entire episodes, even dialogue scenes, to sort of play test the episode, and he can see where the writing is not working, even at that stage. So all told, on season 2, we rendered over 6,000 shots, previs shots out of Unreal, and that was just the beginning. So I'm going to jump sort of to the end, and then I'm going to step back and look under the hood. But one of the great things about using a game engine, specifically Unreal, for visualization work is that you can build off of the content that you're creating, and you can have this interactivity. Cyclops is our AR on-set app, which is a pretty mature tool at this point. I think it's been around six years or so. Really designed by Eric Carney, one of the original 6 founders, a visual effects supervisor on Game of Thrones. It has a ton of features. These days, you can use the LiDAR on the iPad to scan your surroundings and use that as a holdout layer to hold out over a CG set extension. It has green screen compositing. Obviously, it's AR based, so it tracks itself. It's able to remember your alignment in the world, in the physical world versus the virtual world. It's able to push changes back that you make in the app into Unreal in a round-trip workflow. And this is, as I said, powered by Unreal. And if you work with us in Previs, we are able to take our Previs content animated scenes and push it into the app as DLC content. So that you can see this here on House of Dragon very recently. It's a much loved tool. Not only do visual effects supervisors and DPs love it, but also actors, because it's a lot more visual to see the size of this thing, this monster, this castle, than a tennis ball. Another example, we call this one Chimera. This was based on the HoloLens. Rest in peace. Microsoft is end-of-lifing it very soon. But I think the days of AR glasses have a bright outlook, with Meta and Snap both announcing their prototypes recently. Another example of the kind of things that we can build on top of our visualization content because we're doing it in Unreal. So this is a tool designed for art departments to sort of replace whiteboard model scouting with AR headsets. Okay, so I said I was going to get into the weeds. I'll go fast through this, and if you have questions, we can get into more detail as you have appetite for. So this should be obvious to anyone who's a pipeline TD that we use Python in the engine, but when we started, it wouldn't have been an obvious choice. The Python API for Unreal was introduced in 2018, and we began this work in January of 2019. And so the API was brand new. It had a lot of gaps, but Epic made some smart choices in creating it. They bound Python functions to blueprint functions. So anything that's exposed as a blueprint function is also available in Python. And if you can write C++, then you can create your own blueprint functions. Therefore, the whole system is very extensible. In the visual effects community, we tend to work in Python, so we had internal resources that we were able to leverage to write Unreal tools, and we quickly were able to incorporate PyQt to get our UIs going in Unreal. That's just an example of one Python library we used. Building on that, we've thought a lot about the best way to sort of structure this, and one of the considerations that we have is we're often not the only vendor working in Unreal on a show. We need to be able to share assets and also not share what we don't want to share. So in terms of plugins, we avoid engine changes. We use the native engine. And that's, again, so we can be maximally compatible. We can work with as many people as easily as possible. And then as far as plugins go, we put runtime functionality in a core plugin. So primarily we have editor tickable base classes for all the common types, skeletal mesh, static mesh, camera, Niagara, so on. So that because we tend to work in the editor and we're not building packaged games, we're rendering out of the editor, we need tick functionality to play in the viewport. And so we build most of our assets on top of these base classes. And then we also, determinism is a requirement. So if you have an explosion and it starts on frame 30 and it goes for 60 frames, frame 75 needs to look exactly the same every time you render that shot. And so we've built sequencer sort of broadcasting its frame number as a subsystem into the core plugin, and a lot of our tooling is built on top of that. And then all of our artist tools and the additional API that we expose for editor is in a tools plugin, which we never have to share because nothing that is used at runtime to create the image is dependent on it. So all our asset dependencies are in the core plugin, and we're happy to share a compiled version of that, not exposing source code, but we're happy to share a compiled version of that with third parties, which makes it really easy to work with others in an Unreal ecosystem. One of the first significant tools we built was a render layer tool. Since then, Epic has introduced the movie render graph. Hopefully you've gotten a chance to see it or hear about it this week. Pretty awesome tool. We still use ours. It does a couple things that the movie render graph doesn't do, which I've talked to Ryan and the others about. One is that collections are unique assets. These would be the things in the scene that you want to select and have render a certain way depending on the layer that they're in. You might want to share a collection between different shots, and so having those being unique entities was important to us. Also, you can see on the right side of that UI, there's an outline of the scene. And we go down to this individual material in terms of granularity, so you can override a single material, not all the materials on a component. So again, this is a Python-based tool with a bit of C++, and Qt UI. Our UIs have been updated since this, but you get the idea. Some other pipeline challenges, which I'll just gloss over. In the beginning, Gen 1 of our pipeline, we needed everything to move from Maya into Unreal. So the first problem to solve was how do you transfer everything in batch efficiently and accurately? So we wrote a JSON-based format that handled baking down to world space and coordinate space conversions to get it into Unreal. And our pipeline for years has been sort of reliant on that core technology. Also, remote procedure call. We wanted Maya to be able to send commands to Unreal. Today, you can use the Python remote executor to do this. It's native in the engine. When we were starting in 2019, that wasn't available, so we had to roll our own. So when we publish an asset in Maya, we're able to send the path of that FBX to Unreal and have it auto-import it if both are up at the same time. And LiveLink built on that as well. So Epic had introduced a sort of example LiveLink plugin, which we extended. You can see that there at the bottom of the screen. Basically, when the user selected something in the Maya viewport, we would send a command to Unreal to tell it which actor had been selected, and a component would get added in a LiveLink subject set on that actor, and you would get a LiveLink established between those objects without having to do any setup on the Unreal side. So that was really powerful when we were working in this sort of hybrid way with straddling both applications. Per-force automation kind of goes without saying. The main things that we've done there are automatically creating a workspace and ensuring that the workspace is synced when the user launches Unreal, and then handling submissions when shots are rendered and things like that. Lately, we've been continuing to build on Deadline integration for Render Farm, so we're able to sort of package up the manifest of the scene, send it to Deadline, have it render, and it should be one-to-one with what you would have seen had you rendered locally, which is a challenge if anyone's tried this. One way that we're sharing our innovation and know-how with the larger community is we've created this plugin called Unreal P4 Migrate, which is on GitHub. There's a good README on it if you are curious. It solves a really specific problem about sharing assets with other parties in a Perforce depot. Typically, you might be in one stream for visualization and a different stream for VAD. And getting stuff from one to the other is a common problem, common need. And a lot of the ways that you can do it are very destructive, lossy, or you're sending way more content than you need to from one stream to the other because you really just wanted that environment. Or you're sending something and not all of its dependencies, so you end up with broken references on the other side. This solves that problem because it works from inside Unreal where it knows the references, it knows the dependencies of the assets that you want to send, and it will create what's called a branch mapping in Perforce. Basically, it says, send all these files, the ones that I have selected, and its dependencies from this stream to that stream. And then in Perforce, you can use that to merge a change list. So you send only what you want, and the version history is maintained, so the next time you send, it knows what it has and what it doesn't have. And so that's a great tool that's working from 4.27 up to 5.4 and is available on GitHub for free. So Project Lima, this is a cool piece built on it. Lima stands for Limited Maya, so this is sort of our current gen pipeline where we're trying to animate in Unreal using Control Rig. And we have shot structure built there, shot creation and versioning is done in Unreal. Only asset setup, modeling, texturing are done outside of Unreal. So
this is just a little internal test.
Yeah, little internal test, all the animation done in Unreal, rendering, lighting, done in Unreal as well. So that kind of brings us up to the modern day in terms of our Unreal pipeline. We're big believers in Control Rig and animating an engine and are invested in doing that going forward and have a number of shows doing that currently. I don't have time to talk about all of the aspects of that, but if you have questions, happy to talk later. And then I'm going to throw it back to Chris to talk about the next venture building on this.
I'm getting a message from the booth that we have 5 more minutes, so I'm going to cram in this, which is something I'm very, very proud of. We've been working behind the scenes a super long time to try to make an a parallel pipeline for final animation output out of our studio alongside the visualization pipeline. So during the pandemic, we spent some of that government money on doing little experiments that got us a little bit more excited about the feasibility of this. And so what we did is we ended up pouring all of that into this one little project that we call Sky Tribe, which is a short film we concocted out of thin air. And it was a test bed for trying to get a unique, non-gamey look out of the engine. So here's a mini documentary on how that came together.
Rapid visualization of ideas has long been core to the third floor. As we now expand our work and tools into final animated content production, we knew these new capabilities had to come with the power to iterate across the process. This goal required us to create a pipeline to smoothly craft sequences real-time in Game Engine. We also needed to stress test every facet of production, and the best way to do that was with an actual piece of new animation. Sky Tribe. We wanted to design a piece that didn't have the type of modern video game look that is often associated with real-time rendering. Instead, we pursued a stylized, painterly aesthetic that helped us demonstrate the use of game engine to produce looks more akin to traditional animation. One of the beauties of real-time engine rendering is that it allows characters, environments, special effects, and other key aspects to be created and progressed within a shared sandbox. Camera positioning, timing, lighting, coloring, and texturing can be explored and re-explored in detail within and across scenes without waiting for standard turnarounds. We built our animation pipeline on the third floor's existing Unreal Engine visualization pipeline. We custom-designed shaders and render passes that open up the pipeline to a wide range of artistic styles. We also engineered flexible artistic tools that allow totally different looks, like Skytribe's deep, rich inks and textured line work.
Your eyes. They're so...
They're what?
Skytribe's FX were meant to marry 2D and 3D styles cohesively. These were handcrafted in 2D and placed in shots, both in engine and during post. Lighting was done directly in Unreal. For the lighting department, working in engine increases both quality and speed. Some of Skytribe's sequences were lit and rendered by a single artist in a single week. We expanded our Unreal render layer tools to allow compositing of multiple passes, as in traditional offline workflows, but much more quickly. We also tapped Unreal's speed and quality to automate editorial-driven full-sequence rendering for internal and external reviews. This allowed us to track the process and make decisions about the content in real time, something any creative producer can do on a daily basis with our workflow, from the beginning to end of production.
Come on! That was awesome!
So thanks. So if you like that, we're working on a feature now, and we can't disclose it right now, but sometime next year we have some big news about that. We're really excited that the work that we put into the rigging to make it all work in Maya and Unreal simultaneously, and also to push the character performances is really resonating with audiences.
You were just a mark. Go!
All hand animated, no mocap. Of course, what's great about this is we can change everything all at once in Unreal, including the compositing, the lighting, the framing elements. And this way we can make changes up into the last minute and simply play back the scene to create the final result. So I just wanted to say thank you, and on behalf of me and Johnson, it's just such a pleasure to be here. I'm so inspired by everything you all are doing in the community, and that how much Epic is supporting our community. Thank you so much for supporting visualization, and the work has just begun. Thank you.